Okay, so we're live. Hi, Likhit.
Hey, hi Manaswini.
How are you?
All good. How is it from your end?
All good, all good. So, I just wanted to talk a bit about paid social for SaaS, and I chose you because two things. So, first is you started off your career in paid social, right? So, we were working for a company and you were doing paid social, and I was doing paid search. So, that's one thing, and the other thing is then you pivoted to SaaS, and now you're working with Triple Dart and handling many big SaaS companies. So I thought you're a perfect match to talk about paid social for SaaS. So I'll start off with the first question, which is the most common one, which is how do you find if paid social is right for a company?
Cool. Thanks, Manaswini. Thanks for a great introduction. I mean, yeah, it's been lovely working in this last 2 years in B2B SaaS and, pivoting and, upskilling myself from B2C to B2B and also, you know, to work more on the search and social side and trying to balance both. So it's been great, but yeah, happy to share whatever I know. So I might not be the best match, all of that, but I'll try my best to give you some insights on what we have been doing internally, like what are some of the frameworks that I can talk about. Yeah, happy to get started. Cool. So yeah, I think coming to your first question, right? Like what are the companies that can start off with paid social? So if you think of typically the SaaS companies, whatever we are building out currently from India and global SaaS companies. So broadly, like you'll see, vertical SaaS coming out in these days quite often, like compared to horizontal SaaS. So vertical SaaS is something where it just operates to specific industries or specific ICP, all of that. So your product will be very niche to certain audience. So if you find to be in that position where you will be targeting or your ICP is pretty much to the limited space, and that's when you also tend to realize there won't be a lot of search volume or demand is already being created through paid search. So that's when you actually start to look out for additional channel that can help you initially build that demand gen engine for you. And you initially need to push in more, creating that demand for that entire industry, followed by other companies, your competitors can also come and chip in. So if you're in that space, like where paid search is not contributing a lot because of the volume restriction, or you are not able to target specific people in the industry, that's when the social comes. Because unlike search, your social is more based on the audience targeting, right, rather than search based or query based targeting. So you will have a better control on whom you want to target and what industries that you want to look for. So that's a great way to start, great way to analyze whether paid social will work for you or not. This is more from theoretical point of view, whether this will work or not, but there'll be a lot of inside thing like you need to look at in terms of the metrics whether this will match or not. So yeah, I think first point, like just remember, like whether you have been already maxing out some demand from the search channel, or if the volumes are low where you can't scale. So that's the first thing that you need to check. Second thing, like just try to understand, like what is that unit metrics that comes to if you run a paid social. So just imagine a scenario, let's say for paid search, if you want to run for the specific audience, and let's say like if you are spending like $10,000 in search, let's say if your CPC itself is like $20 or $30, so you might not able to scale beyond one point of time, because your CPC is already high. So even if you get leads, MQL, SQL sort of it, that might not convert down the funnel at the optimal cost that you're looking for in terms of the CAC, because your inbuilt CPC, which you can't control, that itself will be higher, right? So that's when you can start looking at social. So in most cases, depending on the targeting, so you will able to have a better control on the CPC CPMs that you're operating at. Right, that's when like you can start looking into the paid social channels. So number one, just based on your space you are in, just understand which industry you are in. So that's based on number one. Number two is based on your unit metrics, whether it makes sense or not. So in triple dart, like we usually follow a quick framework and calculation to understand whether paid social will be right for a specific account or not. I'm happy to share that. Maybe I'll share my screen if you allow me. Then I will get started.
Yeah, yeah, please.
Cool. So yeah, just a minute. It's been loading.
So like $20 would be a high CPC. I thought that would be low compared.
Yeah, I just gave an example, but in some cases for certain industry, we have seen CPCs going up to even 100, 200 for certain regions like in US and all, like, even for a marketing analytics tool, like, $50 to $70 product, $50 to $70 CPCs, in fact, became a common, right? And if you're
Hmm.
running a competitor campaign, that will be even more higher. So it just depends on which industry you are in, then you can understand whether this will make sense for you or not. So yeah, I think coming back to a framework, so this is how, like, we usually understand, so how whether between the channels, whether LinkedIn and Meta will work for me. So typically, if you see, like, well, this is a quick calculator which I'm happy to share across in the comments. So example, like, if you want to understand, like, between Google, LinkedIn and Meta, if I want to get one customer from each specific channel, so what is the total number of leads that I need to generate? So that is the first thing that I want to calculate, right? So because I need to have some base, so what is the expected cost? All of that has to be the first thing that I want to do. So you will have some understanding, or based on the industry benchmark. So what is your lead to MQL? All of that, you can just input it. So once you input it, like, you will able to understand, like, depending on the CPC. CPCs again is a variable here. So example, if you're considering $40 CPC in Google, and $30 in LinkedIn and $10 in Meta. So this one typically you can run with some $500 budget and understand what are the metrics that comes to. So before you start really scaling to get one customer, or 10 SQLs, you will have a better data in terms of the CPC. So once you have this better understanding on CPC, like, I will able to get to know. So example, like, for this specific account, like, what I understood is, for Google, like, if I scale, my CAC will be close to 71K. But if I just do the same, let's say if I want to get the same one customer from LinkedIn, my CAC is likely to be just 52,000, because my variables, like, CPC is slightly been lower compared to Google. At the same time, like, since I'm able to target more specific companies, and since the control of ICP is in my hands, so I will have a better conversion rate overall, right? So if I do that, like, if I just do this based on that, like, I will have a better CAC, number one. Number two, like, what is the CAC payback that I can get? So within 4 months, I'm likely to recover the cost that I spent for that customer, right? So you are based on your LTV. So your LTV is also is very decent at 2.3. So depending on, like, what this metric number comes to, so this is the important thing, like, if I want to spend in Google, like, I just need to spend 25% of the pipeline value that I received. But in LinkedIn, if I just do the same, just 14% that I need to spend, right? And if I able to do it Meta, what happens is, you will typically see lower CPCs compared to LinkedIn, given the targeting is not as broad as what you see in LinkedIn, right? So your CPC is likely to be low, and the same time, like, conversion rate is also low. So even if your top of the funnel won't look great, because if you just want to generate one customer, you still need to get at least 156 leads, depending on the funnel numbers that you're looking for. So if I do that way, like, I'm still in decent position compared to, like, what I'm doing it for Google. So in Google, let's say, or at least pretty close. So that can give me as an additional channel, like, in terms of the CAC, and and also it help me to scale up. So based on this, I can clearly understand, like, more than Google, LinkedIn can be a better channel, given my unit metrics like CPC, conversion, all of that makes sense. And this is how we can get started with LinkedIn.
Okay, this is really fancy.
Yeah, so whatever I color coded, right? So these things, it's more like a variable. So once you know some metrics, if you have been already running, or if you already been getting leads in a direct channel or organic, so you can just try to understand what is the lead to MQL and all of that if you've been getting there. So you can have some assumptions based on that. So typically what happens in compared to Google, your Meta will have a lower lead to MQL ratio, right? And even the conversion rate down the funnel won't be as great as Google. So assuming all these metrics, like even like in a worst case, I'm able to still make better CAC or additional channel that I can scale to compared to Google. So yeah, so this is how, like we ensure or verify whether the paid social will work or not. So this is the once we have put this framework. So what we do is, like we initially this is just an assumption. Like after that, what we do is, like we'll just runs with a smaller budget, and we'll try to understand what are the metrics that we have got till now. Okay, then, like for what happens, like from LinkedIn or paid social, it gets really difficult to forecast customer immediately. So if I want to generate like one customer, I still need to spend a lot. Like I still need to spend like 52K, 78K based on the metrics that it what comes to. But I don't have cushion to spend that much, right? Like I can't, without even verifying, I just can't go and spend 52K in one channel. So what we typically do is, after that, like we based on our understanding on the current metrics, whatever we have run with the test budgets, then we will also able to understand, let's say, like I just want to test out the quality of the leads of my first 5 leads or 10 leads that I get from the respective channel, right? So if you just do that calculation, so few metrics I again assume, like based on the conversion rate, based on the CPC, then if you're currently running at a current daily budget, how much you want to scale to. Let's say if I just spend like 200 in a given day, I will able to reach out my target lead count in this respective day. So if I just spend like this $200 for 25 days, I will able to understand what is the expected funnel that I get out of these 5 leads.
Okay.
So this is where this framework will have like a two steps. So first step is just to get from one customer, like what is your overall understanding in terms of the CAC. But given, like you can't directly spend like 50K or 70K from social channels, you break it down based on the leads, so you can test out this funnel. So whether you are able to convert 30% of it to SQL opportunity, all of that. So you can directly, like understand, like to get at least 10 leads from social channels, what is the dollars that we need to spend. So maybe like I'll just spend some 7,500 in a month, and see, like what is my CAC, everything that comes to.
Hmm. Yeah,
So yeah,
this is
so
very, like, it's very useful to anyone who's working with SaaS clients.
correct, yeah. So this is basically, like without investing a lot, like just spend some initial dollars and understand what your metrics comes to, then just plan for the leads, and then once you're confident that your funnel will convert at 30%, 40% SQL rate, all of that, then start investing more, right? So yeah, so depending on your ACV, all of that, here one assumption that we took is, like or one account that we have did this for, their average deal size itself is close to 150K. So even if your CPL is close to 1,000 or 2,000,
Hmm.
your CAC can still make sense because their deal size itself is very high. But if your if your average contract value or deal size itself is less than 50K, then this CAC or this CPL won't make sense for you. So if you just spend like again like $50 for one click, like for a smaller ACV product, then it won't make sense. So you just need to play around these variables and understand, where exactly how you're balancing or how these three buckets looks like, and prioritize which channel to go for. So yeah, so once you do this, this is where, like we get a better understanding for the entire funnel, and we'll get started with LinkedIn. So
I
yeah.
think you could do like a LinkedIn giveaway, like the influencers post to just get engagement.
Yeah. Let's plan it around. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, like talking about LinkedIn, like I haven't ever worked on LinkedIn ads, but I've just heard that it's really expensive. So, like, is that true?
LinkedIn is again expensive because even if you see compared to Meta, the base assumption that we always keep is your CPCs will be always higher than Meta. So that will be always the case. But if you just understand from platform perspective, what happens is, um, compared to Meta. LinkedIn has a robust targeting options that you can go for, right? So specifically, LinkedIn is again made for B2B business. So Facebook again, you can still use for B2B and B2C, but LinkedIn might not be the best for B2C to get started with, right? But for it's just been targeting approaches, everything has been very customized. All the use cases is pretty much addressed over there in LinkedIn. So at least from targeting point of view, in tracking point of view, they're still not so great, but they're still picking up. But from LinkedIn cost perspective, like your CPM, CPC will obviously be high. So, but that shouldn't let us panic. But overall, if you see the down the funnel metric, that will still make sense for you if you have a very tight targeting. So that's number one. But number two, like where most of the companies and marketing leaders gets panic is like they just look LinkedIn as a one standalone channel. So if you just look one LinkedIn as a just standalone channel, then you are likely to see a lower conversion rate or lower CAC, because LinkedIn as a channel starts assisting the overall conversions that you might be getting in other channels. So compared to Facebook, your click through attribution or click through conversions will be much higher in LinkedIn compared to like what you see in Meta. So if you factor in all these conditions, like then LinkedIn, though it's expensive, but if you look at returns point of view, and also to get you the enterprise companies, so there's no other channel that can beat LinkedIn. Yeah, so that's one thing again, like it will be still expensive, but there are like other tools that started to um, make LinkedIn ad campaign performance get more visibility. For example, we at Triple Dart use tool like factors, that will help us to get more understanding on from even from what companies visiting, because LinkedIn by default it will just give us some 25 companies max, like whoever is engaging with that. But if you use tools like factors, obviously you will able to get a lot more details on which companies should be engaging actively with your ads, and then you will able to build a funnel out of it, right? Let's say, like whether these companies has visited your website from other channels, and you can also start doing outbound from the channel. So if you look that point of view, LinkedIn is again a great place. You just forget about the standalone cost that associated with it. Yeah. So yeah, so
Okay.
that's my take. Expense is not a problem, but how you can make you best use of the audience and how you look at the data will be the key over there. And one more thing, LinkedIn, how I mean, there's if you look at the Meta, like you can just do contact based targeting, right? Like maybe you can upload a list and do it. But in LinkedIn, again, given it has a targeting based on the company list targeting, all of that, so that's a add-on uh, add-on feature, like that you can definitely should be doing it, like so which companies is really mean to you, right? Like if you have 1,000 target list for this quarter, like maybe outbound team can still continue to do their efforts, but inbound as a channel, like LinkedIn will still able to get you there. So if you just have a clear targeting approach, so targeting is super clear, that you need to keep in mind. And second, if how you look at the data will be different. So given, like we have two state factors, so typically we have also been seeing your spend to pipeline ratio will be 10x, right, compared to LinkedIn if you look at the view through attribution and all. So yeah, so if you just look at the platform level, it gets we are likely to get panic, but if you look at a long term view, that's a great channel to start with.
Okay, and how do you usually split between Meta and LinkedIn? Like keeping paid search aside, what
Yeah.
is your split like?
So the split again, like the common answer, it depends again, like so let's say, uh, like how I shown the calculator again, right? Like it should be up to you to understand which channel gives you at what CAC, and at what till what spend to pipeline ratio you're comfortable with. So if you say, like if you're still growing 5x in a year, so if you're still fine, your CAC is still going up, and if you still want to acquire customers as soon as possible, so you can still go high on the Facebook, because that might not give you the immediate results, but if your targeting is still been figured out in Facebook that you can still do it. I don't have a concrete budget split on it, but in most companies that I handle, 80% of the budget will go for LinkedIn and 20 for Facebook. Let's say for the companies whose ACV is above 15,000 or so. But if your ACVs itself is close to or less than 5K or 3K kind of product and from SaaS, from vertical SaaS specifically, then let's say we are running Facebook ads very heavily on Shopify, one of our Shopify app that we have, right? So
Hmm.
that if you look into that, hardly we are doing anything on LinkedIn. So 90% is going on Facebook, given their ACV itself is, let's say, per month it's close to 20, I would say $20 per user. So hardly it will be a 5,000 at a max. So even if you have like few users in that plan, so for a 5,000 AAC product, I might not give the best out of LinkedIn. And even since the ICP is again more like a SMBs, so LinkedIn might not be the great platform to get started. So depending on the ACV and depending on the stage of the company growth, so we tend to prioritize that. So yeah.
Sorry, but it's ACV.
Yeah, average contract value. So just like how you have a average deal size, right? So it's pretty much the same. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And by Meta, do you just mean Meta or that includes Insta as well?
Yeah, so pretty much I include Insta. So so for few regions, Facebook is still working. I would say, if you're still targeting people who are into middle age, let's say 35 to 45, 50, kind of, if your decision makers are still there in that segment, and if you're still an SMB segment, like Facebook is still working well for us. So recently we have been also working on one construction tech account, that's where, I would say 60-70% is still Facebook heavy, given their ICP is more
Hmm.
from middle aged, and they're not very uh, uh, tech associated. Like, it's not a typical tech directors that we are targeting, so it's more like a construction founders, all of that. So if you just think about the ICP perspective, uh, uh, Meta will still, Facebook will still work, but Instagram, it can work depending on your ICP again. Like, if for the Shopify thing, Shopify app account that I mentioned, so for that, Instagram has a bigger hand on it. So I won't say you just need to micro segment that further, depending on where your ICP is. Meta is still able to figure that out. Yeah.
Okay, so I just have a question. Like, have you ever worked with the brand or noticed that a particular channel of them, like for their brand, is not working, and then you completely take off your funds from that particular platform?
Yeah, that definitely happens during the testing phase. So I just shown you that calculator, right? Theoretically it might sound great, but only if you run the ads, you'll able to understand what is your what is your CPC looks like, and what is your funnel looks like if you're just getting started. So obviously, I would say, there will be like some 20-30% of the companies we tried, but we couldn't scale it at a funnel that we want to go with, because down the funnel it might not make more sense. So testing is still fine. Potentially you just no need to you break the bank, just spend some initial $2,000 $3,000 in couple of weeks, and then understand, like, even if you get 10 leads from your ICP, that still converts down the funnel, that can give you some answers. So yeah, but one thing I also suggest is, just start retesting the campaigns or the channel again. So let's say you have been testing your social campaign, let's say a year back or some 10 months back. So things might not still remain the same. So
Hmm.
if you have failed in like year back or 10 months back, so I still recommend, just test out like some 10 some smaller budget, and figure out how we can make it work. So just don't stop with one attempt, because there'll be a lot of factors like seasoning, funding, all of that, right? So you just need to figure out, in a year's window, maybe like a test out couple of times at least, and validate yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm also a personal fan of keep trying out, because I see a lot of LinkedIn posts where people say, don't try this, this is not going to work. But I've personally also seen a lot of brands where a thing that hasn't worked 3 months back happens to work after 3 months.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So we can still improve a lot. Example, like when we started for one company, 1 year back, we started off with LinkedIn, but it didn't go great. Like we tested, but we realized the CPC is way too high for them to scale. Then they started to add more use cases, more features into the product. Then we restarted it a year later. So we started to see much better results compared to what it was earlier.
Hmm.
So yeah, as you started to scale your products, and again, like LinkedIn might be also the best for you to showcase your social proof, all of that. So even if you're not running any campaigns for actual conversions, so maybe you can just set some 5% of your overall marketing budget over there, just run like basic retargeting campaigns and social proof campaigns, so you will be always on top of the mind from the decision makers on LinkedIn. So worst case, you can still do it, like pretty much for all the accounts. Even like we are doing a search heavy, like there'll be at least like 5% of the budget that will go for retargeting and branding actually.
Hmm. Okay. Cool. And I know you've prepared some templates for the B2B audience and a creative framework that you follow for meta ads. So do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, so I will get started with that. So for this, like this is where like I say like most of the research has to go from your end, like like how you plan search with keywords, all of that. For LinkedIn and Meta, like any for any social channel, so you just need to come up with certain journeys that you want to target. Because if you look into social, it's more like a funnel and decision. I mean, you just need to structure the campaign in such a way that you start with awareness, and also you have campaigns still retargeting, right? And you have a multiple segments, so you can understand which segment is doing well within that bucket. So what we typically do is like we divide our overall engagement in any social channel into 3 to 4 different ways. For example, like people who doesn't know the brand at all, they might not never seen our ads at all. Like they have might not have interacted anytime with us. So example, they haven't know the brand, or they're not even aware of that one problem exists. So this is where all the very niche products will come under this bucket. So we just need to educate the audience that there is this problem exists. There are few accounts, it's very obvious, there's this problem and this thing they want to solve. But for certain accounts, you need to implicate that problem, saying this is the actual problem and this is leading you to this much loss and all of that, right? Like how you can implicate the problem is also important. So first thing, we create this persona journey. So we take like 5 different personas, like people based on the awareness stage. So not aware about the problem, and looking for the solution. Then we try to understand, like what is the ideas that we can generate. Like if they already know aware about the problem, just talk about the problem statement and do a brand pitch. Then you talk about the product pitch, and then if you have any specific use case, then you can go for it. So this is one account that we have done for a publishing based company. So example, like this is how, like we want to structure our persona. So then you divide your campaign based on the objective. For few use cases, you might not just, example, if you're still talking about they're not even aware of the problem, right? You just go and ask them to sign up for a demo. So that's when you just need to educate them, drive more traffic, and make them understand what exactly you're talking about. So first, try to prepare this overall understanding. So you might not use all the segments into your campaign, but this will give a fair understanding on what are the buckets that you have ticked out. So once we have done it, like what we will also do is, so we'll divide these campaigns basically, like stage of the funnel, and what is the targeting that we want to use, and what is the exclusion. So you might not again able to spend all the buckets. Example, like I don't want to spend 30%, 30% in each of these bucket. But even let's say, like if I can rotate this every month on month, that's still fine. So example, like this is a very top of the funnel that I want to target. Like I want to start with brand awareness, right? And then, like this is the retargeting that I usually want to keep. So again, like if within retargeting, I will also have like conversion based campaign, and a lead gen, all of that. So you can further split it into whether you want to do based on the book demo, or you just want to have some soft ebook download, all of that. So we will build like something like a full funnel strategy like this. So this will cover everything, but you might not have to spend everything in each bucket. Given we have a limited budget, you can just go start with where you are more. What is most priority? Like if your priority is to start with book demo, then once you start to see some downfall in the leads coming in, so that means you would are likely to exhaust your audience. Like if you are running a retargeting audience, so that's when you start to push more from the reach campaign, traffic campaign, then you can make them fall into this bucket. So yeah, so this is one thing again, like if you want to look at more comprehensively, like so we have I have another thing to show you. So if you see, like this is one, like we again want to split it based on how you want to structure a campaign. Is again really important. So like we just want to start off with a pan India based campaign. Then if uh, certain regions is working well for you, then go for it. Like between lookalike and interest, how you can segment it. Then again, like if you want to talk about use cases, then that's one thing you can talk about. So it really depends on how you want to structure the campaigns, and then you can understand which bucket is doing well out of all this. Then you can just scale those buckets as well. So I know for the fact, like under the problem and solution aware segment. So I don't want to spend more on lead generation based campaign under lookalike, because I've been using this audience already in a different way in another set of campaigns. So just do this exercise and try to understand what is the total audience that's available, and how you don't want to overlap a lot, but you can still have a decent mix of campaigns and ad group, and based on the performance, you can just scale it and reduce the budgets accordingly. So yeah, this is how the structuring look like, and the interesting part, or the most important thing, because structuring you can still go ahead and change it. This is the important part, like audience and creative framework. So audience, what we typically do is we try to put down all the potential audience that you can target for any given account. So if this is more from a construction tech account, then we try to understand, like apart from retargeting on your own data basically, like people who engage with ads, people who visited your paid search landing pages or competitor landing pages, pricing page visitors, all of that. Lookalike again, like based on your demo schedule, demo done, all of that will have it. So we'll just document, like what is the total number of potential audience that you can target, and what is the reach comes to. So you just document all the potential audience that you can go. Like this is more like how you do a keyword research in Google. So you need to do an audience research in LinkedIn and also in Facebook to document what is that comes to. So once you do it, like this is the first step that I want to do it from audience point of view. But you just can't use the one single audience, because you need to combine certain audience for you to get the best out of it. So what we typically do is this: how, like we combine the audience. For example, like we take like up to 2 to 3 different audience and combine. Let's say like construction management comes under this title, and comes under this revenue industry, everything. So if I do this way, like I have a total of 62 audience combination that I can try with based on all the audience that I have done, right? So this is the second thing that I do. So first, once I research the audience, you just need to understand how you can combine everything into a proper audience segment, and then understand, like what is that audience size come to. So in few cases, your audience size will be very low, which you can't really go after. But for certain audience where it's decently been there, let's say this is 379K is very good audience size, like 600K is again a good audience size. So depending on audience size, you can get started and try to map, for which campaign you need to start which audience, right? So this is how, like we typically do the audience research and set the targeting up. So this will clearly tell you, like whether this could be you can test out, like between 5 different audience for the same creative, like which is doing well for it, right? So once you have this framework, then it gets really easier to knock off whatever is not working, and then just stick to what is being working for you. Yeah, so this is the audience framework that we follow, Manaswini.
Yeah, so and to anyone who doesn't know, Likit is a Google Sheet fanatic. He's
Yeah.
obsessed with data and Google Sheets. And okay, I have one question. So can you go to the audience tab?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned like we can target competitor visitors, like people who have
Uh,
visited the competitor.
yeah, yeah, not exactly from competitors. It's more from paid. So, example, if you're running competitor campaign in paid, right? Like if you have been already running a campaigns for quite a long time, you can create your audience based on your UTM parameters. So example, UTM campaign contains competitor. Like you're likely to create a segment where your people who already visited your competitor page from your paid search campaign, you can create that bucket. So once you have enough audience for it, like I will create a dedicated campaign for it in LinkedIn and just show some migration stories. So example, if someone migrated from that competitor to my brand, I will just start showing the use cases and at least create some awareness, saying this is all that I'm doing. So this will help, depending on the audience size that you have. But if you're still early, like you don't have a lot of data, then maybe you can combine all the paid users into one single bucket, and then you can get started. But this is one thing that we have seen been working well for us for a really big companies, and if your audience size is also great.
Yeah, I mean that's super smart.
Yeah.
That's a smart thing to do.
Yeah, so this, and again, like if someone is visiting certain pricing page visitors, then our targeting or our creative messaging will change based on that. So and if they have been visiting 2 3 pages simultaneously, then we will have a different messaging for it. So yeah,
Hmm.
so once you list down the audience, that's where like your 50% of your work is done. The 50% will be more of the creative and campaign structuring that I showed you is just, I mean, I don't really call it as it's very important. No matter how you restructure it, you will still able to get results. It's more from your point of view how you want to see the data, so that will help. And but audience and creative is where you need to put your 100% of the effort.
Hmm. Cool, that's great, and thank you for sharing this.
Yeah.
Uh,
So maybe like I will just show the other one as well. So let's say like the creative framework that we usually follow. So that's the another interesting thing that I can show. So this is the creative framework that we usually follow. So let's say uh, 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 if you think about the creatives, right, like how you tell the stories can be really different for one single product. So you can, for one product, you can, for the same product, you can tell just by focusing on certain features or certain product specific use case. You can just tell based on the value itself. So feature example, you can just tell maybe for a marketing analytics platform, like you can tell convert your e-com customers within your email using the AMP email, all of that, right? So that's a feature that you want to target. If someone wants to can relate to that a feature, or who might sound interested, can go and check that out. So if you don't want to do just based on the feature, might not relate to them, so we can talk about the value centric. Let's say how value centric, I'll give an example for the same marketing analytics tool. So let's say, like if you do an WhatsApp marketing or email marketing, that you still need to spend some amount to it, right? So you just need to spend some dollars over there. But if you do some push marketing or push based ads, or you necessarily don't want to you don't necessarily spend anything rather than the platform cost. So maximize your revenue, or scale to higher customers with zero cost using the push. So people don't want to invest a lot on these WhatsApp marketing, all of that, push can be the great channel to go with for their specific use case, right? So depending on, you might have same push notification as a product, but how you position can be really different, right? And if you can combine both, and maybe if you have pricing as a differentiator compared to your competitor, then that's something you like, that's one different creative that you can try out. So yeah, after that, if you want to just focusing on the demand for, if you want to have your creatives more from the demand perspective, so you just talk about the problem and what it solves, and before versus after, like before having this tool, like how it used to be for you, and after you onboarded with this tool, use all that you can get. So this is more like a to create a FOMO before and after, like what you are likely to miss out, all of that you can talk about. Yeah, Manasvi, there are a lot of things you can do from creative point of view. Maybe we can have another good session just to talk about the creatives that I have been collecting so far.
I think this would be really helpful to D2C marketers as well. I mean, I
Yeah.
see a lot of overlap here. So a lot of these things are tried out by D2C as well.
Correct, correct. Yeah, yeah. So pretty much, I
Cool.
think
So the
the social messaging, all of that urgency, pricing can still come under the B2C bucket. So there'll be a lot of overlap, but typically, like, you necessarily have one product, but how you position will be different. So yeah, I think that's one thing that I want to show, and the other one, like, if I want to show more detailed way, just give me a second, I'll check that out. Yeah, so this one creative, this how, like, we usually do. So once we know, like, these are the buckets that I want to target, let's say, sorry, just, yeah, so this is the creative and LP framework that I follow. So this is the construction tech product that I'm talking about. So let's say, like, for product focus, they have, like, 5 different use cases, like project management, budget management, labor, material vendor, all of that. So for these 5 different use cases, I'm just talking about uh, uh, keeping the product as a hero here. So keeping the product as a hero for this specific use case, what is that specific messaging that I want to go for? So once I have this messaging framework for each use case, then I'll start building creative copies accordingly. So let's say, like, this is the same thing, like, for project management, I can tell the story based on just focusing on a product, or I can also tell for the same project management, I can also tell based on the problem solution, right? So avoid confusion, like, how you can get a quick insights if your project is still on hold. So this you can do it. So similarly, I can also talk about, for the same project management, I can talk about before and after. So before and after, like, before, like, how it used to be all over the place, and now how you can have everything in one place, right? So uh, yeah, so once you create this framework, this gets really easier to understand. So how you tell the story can be different, and you can understand which way of storytelling will work for you.
hmm.
So right, so this is how we usually put together, like, the research phase that we are in while we are getting started with any social channel.
Right. Okay. So I think we've covered Meta and LinkedIn. Now, suppose there's a company who's trying out both and have reached that saturation level, or there could be companies who have tried things but aren't really working for them. Then, what do you recommend? Like, are there any more channels that can be explored?
Yeah, so there are two things to it, like, once so typically, if you think about search versus social, search will never likely to exhaust in terms of the daily intent that's coming to. So if let's say, like, there are 1,000 searches that's coming, you pretty much have more or less the same 1,000 over the period of time, right? But if you think about Facebook, will be a point where you are likely to exhaust that core audience. So let's say, like, for under one targeting, let's take for the specific industry, like construction management. Let's say in India there are, like, 500 lakh 500K people, like that's close to 5 lakh people who's interested in construction thing, or who are likely to be the founders of that or decision makers. So if you have a budget, then you can even exhaust that 500K within a month or so. So even after, like, if you go for second month, the third month, you are likely to exhaust, but you just need to experiment more on the creative thing, and tell different way of story and do that. So platform level saturation will happen for sure. More than search, where its intent still keeps on coming. LinkedIn and Meta, initially your intent will be much higher, but after you go for a certain period, that intent will start to reduce. So example, if there are 100 people again, I mean, not all 100 people will have an equal intent compared to what you see in search. So all 100 searches are likely to have a same intent in search, but for same 100 people, the intent might not be the same in social, right? So Facebook and LinkedIn first try to push your ad more for that first 80 users who are likely to be more high intent within that 100 people bracket. But once you exhausted that 80K bracket, to reach the 20, you might have to spend a lot. Your CPM will be really high, and that's when you are likely to hit a ceiling. So yeah, I think that's where, like, you need to just think about researching, or refreshing more of your creatives, and finding a similar audience to it. So that's one thing. So apart from that, just have a additional channels, like, social is just not about the LinkedIn and the Meta, right? So there are companies for which where the Twitter is still relevant, Quora is still relevant. You might not able to scale as much as you do in Meta and LinkedIn. But even with a smaller budget, you can just tap that top 10% of that segment that you are in. So apart from these social channels, one thing that we also recommend at Triple Dot for our account is to put your ads out on your on the G2 review sites, and typically any review sites like Gartner, G2, all of that. So this will also give you like overall good channel mix. So people who are just people might not be just searching on LinkedIn, sorry, in Google search or LinkedIn, right? Like if they're really serious about that, they are likely to compare in your G2 and understand where we rank in Gartner, everything.
Right.
So we'll also be available in that two segments or in the two tools as well. So G2, one interesting thing that you can do is, since G2 is partnered with LinkedIn, so anyone who has been researching about certain industry, like let's say under marketing tools, if someone is actively researching about that, or people who have been researching about your specific brand in G2, you will able to retarget them in LinkedIn. So once you collect that, once you integrated your G2 on LinkedIn, so that intent data gets passed to your LinkedIn and you can target them. So that's the interesting way, like we can keep everyone uh, uh, in top of the mind, like if they're even going beyond these regular channels. So that's number one you can do. Just use the G2 intent data and the target in LinkedIn. Number two, you can just put some some, just put some basic less dollars in your Gartner, everything. So you can just occupy some certain spots, like maybe you can start coming out in the top 10 or top 5, all of that. So for certain categories you can bid on, like how you do it in paid search. So just bid on certain categories in Gartner, and you can do it. So hardly, like you, even if you just spend for $200, $500, you will still able to get some decent spot in a month. So that will still able to help you. You might not able to get a conversions out of it, but you will still able to be in top of the mind and get some clicks and get some directions to your website. So yeah, so this
Just
is
partner in G2 let people run ads. I didn't know that.
yeah. They do have, but it's not very scalable. So that's why people are not actually talking about it. But it's good to have, like some basic campaigns set up over there. So not like you need to do it immediately. Like once you have seen, uh, there's a lot of competition. Once your brand is well noticed, and people started to research in this specific review sites, that's when you can get started. So it's just basically like push more on the review side, so you can get some visibility over there. Yeah.
So they have their own ad manager, or like how do we run ads on them?
Yeah, so they do have one ad manager, like just a basic portal where you can just put some CPC bidding, just tell like what budget that you want to run, and what is the CPC that you can afford, and just gives you some insights on in which position we are in currently in G2. All of that, it will be there. uh, in Gartner it's specifically that's working that way, and G2, like it's just more, it works more from integration point of view. If you do like G2 and LinkedIn integration, so you will able to collect that data from G2, and that you can pass it to LinkedIn and target people who are researching about your product actively. So yeah, but yeah, I think G2 requires some uh, I think a high-end plan for you to do it. If you're actively using G2 for other sources, then you can go for it. But it just gets bit. I think it will cost 10K a bit for in a doll in a year. Like if you've seen some initial use cases that you want to use for G2, then go for it. But I don't really recommend just for the search or just for the paid perspective. If you want to do it, like I don't suggest that. Yeah.
Okay. Have you tried Reddit ads? I see a lot of Reddit ads.
Yeah, Reddit. I had tried for a couple of brands. So for Reddit again, one thing that I have seen is pretty much like LinkedIn. Reddit as a channel, you go read, but you don't necessarily tend to go out of that platform. It's pretty much same for Quora and Reddit. Like people are very focused on reading what it's there. So we didn't see any active conversions happening out there, but we have seen great number of impressions coming in, and you have a very clear targeting, right? Like you go and select which subreddit or edit that you want to target. Once you're sure, like my audience hangs out in this specific subreddit, then go for the targeting and put your ads and comments and occupy the display ads, all of that. So from awareness point of view, your CPM, everything can make sense. But if you just look at the conversion point of view, they're not really ready to go out of the platform. So even though Reddit has been there for many years, for many decades, in fact, so they couldn't scale their ad revenue just because of this. So their users are not, uh, they don't want to go beyond. They're so focused on just reading or consuming the written content. So yeah,
You guys can target me because I'm ready to leave the platform. I
uh,
click on a lot of Reddit.
yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. Like even I hardly click. I've been using Reddit initially, but not recently. Like I consume a lot of content. That tool itself, I didn't find it very friendly for me to go out of the platform, or I didn't have that nudge to click that CTS. It's not very focused like how you have it in here. If you think about LinkedIn and Meta, like where you primarily consume your content in mobile, you are likely to occupy. Your ads are likely to occupy full screen, right? Like you will have that focus really on your entire mobile screen. Reddit, it's just all over the place. It's more like a display ad, so it's pretty much for the Quora. Quora, like promoted ads work really well. Like we have seen, even though the number of reads that you have got will be very low, but down the funnel it really converts. So if you just use your founder's handle and promote the key question or key pain point for your industry and pitch in your product somewhere at the end, and redirect to your website, so that still works. So I would say, like for few brands that I have worked, so you some at least like 10% of lead contribution will come from Quora. So Quora, at least I'm seeing the conversions coming in, but I didn't find ready to actively give conversions, at least for the brands that I tried.
Hmm. I see very creative ads on Reddit for some reason, and I end up clicking on them.
Okay, I think I need to check it out more often then. So it's been quite some time I tried. Yeah.
I think I am obsessed with Reddit. Like I'm always on Reddit.
So do you use in mobile or desktop?
Mobile.
Okay, okay. I think I never had an app. Yeah, maybe I should explore more in that case.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think we're done with all of our questions. Anything else that you want to add from your side?
No, Manisini, I think we still have, I mean, we can still deep dive a lot, but we can just pick up, if there's anything that, our audience want, or anything that we want to cover, we can have as a separate session as well. Happy to do that. But yeah, I think when it comes to social, just one final thing, try to put more of your efforts on researching your audience and creative, because that will take your 80% of your, you know, uh, uh, how you want to get results out of it. So rest
Hmm.
20%, just focus on tracking, start looking beyond the platform numbers or your CRM numbers. So how it influences your overall marketing or inbound numbers. So if you keep all this in mind, then social will be a great channel for you to do it. Yeah, I think that's it from my end. I think pretty much this campaign structuring, all of that, you can do it on your own way, but how you define your audience and creative is the hero here.
Great, so we're done. And thank you so much for giving so much of your time. I think this was very helpful. And anyone, if has any questions, please drop your questions and we can do a separate video on that.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, we're good to go now.
Thanks.
See you
Thanks,
in the next
Mansi.
one.
Yeah, see you soon. Thanks for having me.